Super Rugby, the Saturday games, are both pretty entertaining. I am wearing the incorrect gear, but I'm a bit crook, so I want to keep a nice warm jacket on, hence the Hurricanes gear. But yeah, I will start directly on the first game, and it was the Crusaders putting themselves pretty much into a match point position in Super Rugby Aotearoa. They got the win over the Chiefs, and it's a bonus point win at that. So Gatlin's men have failed to win a game at home all of the Aotearoa season. They've got one game left, and then they finish off on the bye. And it's not been pretty reading for them. And the game started off pretty ugly for them as well. D-Mac missed a penalty, and then Tom Sanders punished them with a try down the left wing. It's almost like he was punishing D-Mac directly because he went down that left wing. And to D-Mac's credit, he'll always put his body on the line to try and stop that final, to put in that final tackle, but he just got flattened. And he did inch Sanders towards the touchline, but it wasn't enough. So missed conversion makes it 5-0 to the Crusaders early. And then Will Jordan gets one. He always seems to get one. 14 minutes. The Crusaders go like 17, 18 phases, and eventually it's just a matter of numbers. They had advantage anyway, so even if they hadn't scored, they would have at least kicked a penalty. Will Jordan just strolled over for that one. Easiest score he's probably scored all season. 12-0, and the Chiefs are looking pretty poor value, to be fair. However, to their credit, they don't give up. And they themselves, from about 19 minutes, they go 9+ phases down the Crusaders' end. They pass it forward, but they go back for a penalty, so the Chiefs get a scrum, and from that scrum, they end up getting a try through Boshia a few phases later. They did check a knock on, but it was ruled to be all good, so it's 12 points to 7. That's kind of game on, especially when D-Mac kicks another penalty with the Crusaders being offside. It's 12-10. It's 2 points in the game. However, a couple of things didn't go the Chiefs' way, and one of them especially was Sean Stevenson's yellow card for a deliberate knock-on. It's one of those ones where you're like, I don't think he was necessarily deliberately trying to knock the ball on. He did stick his hand out, I think, to probably try and catch it rather than to disrupt, but the referee's got to make a judgment call, and he said he wasn't in a realistic position to catch the ball, so he ended up getting yellow carded, and immediately before halftime, the Crusaders take advantage of that penalty and the man advantage to get a try through Cody Taylor. So that's 7 more points on the board. 5 more points on the board for the Crusaders because they missed the conversion, and it's 5-0 during that yellow card. So scoreboard ticking along, and you got to wonder, Mo'unga doesn't get that much grief about his kicking. I have to keep better track of his kicking stats because maybe it's just he doesn't miss the clutch ones. But there's a few games where his kicking's a bit ordinary, and this was one of those games. Anyway, halftime, the Crusaders have had more possession, more territory, more run meters. They aren't quite tackling as at higher percentage. The Chiefs are actually at 90%, believe it or not. But the Crusaders, I guess, have conceded more penalties, so it's kind of evening things out. Second half, D-Mac kicks a penalty, and it's during the yellow card still, so it's 17-13, and the yellow card is only a 2-point deficit for the Chiefs for that one, so that's kind of a win. And it's close, that man, Will Jordan again, he goes close to the try line, but he can't get it over the line, and the Chiefs manage to get out of jail somehow. They must have not had any more get out of jail free cards, because eventually you can see the scoreline does kind of blow out a bit. A couple of penalties get exchanged. Chiefs make it 16-20, then they make it 19-20. Then Weber at one point pushes Severis over some advertising hoardings, and it looks like Severis makes a bit of a Hollywood out of it and nothing comes from it, but that seems to be a bit of a turning point. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, Brad. Just don't be a fool. Anyway, because straight after that, maybe it's a bit of karma. 2 minutes later, it's Reese who ends up getting the try after he's been pushed over the advertising hoardings. And maybe it should have been some karma for him for, I don't know if he was acting, but it seemed like he made a bit of a meal of it. Yeah, Quentin Strange has got a bit of a line break going on. He seems to bobble it. He seems to knock it on. Reese ends up getting the ball and scoring the try. I thought there was a knock on for all money. He lost control of it and dropped it. But apparently the ref said that's fine. Let me know what you guys thought of that one. I thought that was a bit bizarre one. I thought that was... Like Stevenson's one, I was kind of more... That's the way they ref the game these days. If you put your hand out, you get the ball. You get yellow carded if you don't catch it. But the knock-on I thought was a knock-on for all money. Because especially a few minutes later, after there was a restart, the Crusaders knocked it on again. And that was called a knock-on. Anyway, I won't go on about that one. 65 minutes, the Crusaders put on a big scrum. Mo'unga takes a long-distance penalty, but he misses it, so it doesn't add to his kicking stats. But it doesn't matter because on 67 minutes, Fainganuku gets a try. It's a set move from the Crusaders. Thing of beauty. Go watch the highlights. They've got some slick moves, man. And, yeah, it finishes 32-19. So the Chiefs, as I said, can't get a home win for love. They can't get a win for love nor money, let alone a home win. And, yeah, they are firmly rooted to the bottom of the Super Rugby Aotearoa table. Whereas the Crusaders are now on 24 points. The Blues are on 17. The Hurricanes are on 16. They've all played the same amount of games. So I think if the most the Blues can get to, I think, is 27. And the Crusaders are already on 24. So I think a win next week over the Highlanders at home, I think that sees them home and dry. So this was the danger game. And they managed to see their way through it, even if it was within a point, you know, when it was 19 points to 20 on like 56 minutes. It was looking maybe, but still not likely. Chiefs scrum was under too much pressure. The Crusaders were too good in that department. You look at the final match stats, man. The run meters, 341 to 503. That's in favor of the Crusaders. The possession and territory stats actually kind of evened up, which is... I guess a little bit pleasing for the Chiefs because they seem to be under the pump a wee bit in that first half. Will Jordan had the most run meters, kind of not surprising, 84 run meters. He had 5 defenders beaten. He's an interesting guy because he had one moment where there was a ball being kicked out and he tried to keep it in the field of play but ended up putting his foot in touch, so made a mistake and cost his team. But then a few minutes later, he tried the same thing again, actually got it absolutely spot on. So he's got some composure, that guy, to not let it get into his head. Crusaders' lineout was a lot better this week than it has been in recent times, which was also pleasing to see. Sam Cane, All Blacks captain, remember he made 19 tackles, which was the top in this game. Next best was 14. He did miss 2, but still. Yeah. Clean breaks, 7 to the Crusaders, 2 to the Chiefs. It's kind of indicative of how good that Crusaders defense is at containing the Chiefs lineup. Chiefs have got one more chance away to the Hurricanes, but yeah, it's not been the best time for them. Crusaders just keep powering on. One win more should do it, unless my calculations are messed up. Next game was a close one. Top of the table clash over in Australia. Brumbies against the Reds. It finishes 22 points to 20. It goes right down to the last minute. It's a crazy game. More cliche, one of those games with two halves. You feel like the Brumbies had the better of the first, the Reds had the better of the second, and the score kind of seems to indicate that because, I mean, the Reds were under a yellow card warning after 4 minutes? Because they conceded too many penalties. They didn't end up getting one, but the Fainga try in 6 minutes had advantage with it. I think if he hadn't scored that, the Reds probably would have got yellow carded. But it was the first of 3 maul tries for the Brumbies this time. And surprisingly, their attack looked a bit lackluster compared to that Reds defence. I'm not saying the Brumbies attack is bad, because I've seen them cut teams to bits before and after lockdown, but it seemed a bit dull their attack like a dull knife kind of thing. You know what I mean? Whereas their maul is about as sharp as it gets. So whatever works, I guess. The commentator seemed to be giving it a bit of grief, but bro, it's a thing of beauty to see their maul just rocking up and doing what it does. So yeah, 7-0 early. Reds have almost got no ball. Liliafano is the water boy, which is cool to see. Jordan Pataya comes on for Fairway Satea, who's injured. That's like on 22 minutes. So Pataya maybe getting a few more minutes than he expected, and he looked pretty sharp on his return. 33 minutes, they get another maul try. It's Faenga again. It's a maul try. You can't be giving these guys 5-metre lineouts because they will punish you. 14-0, and the Brumbies are looking like they're going to give the Reds a bit of a hiding. However, at that point, the Reds seemed to wake up a little bit. It looked like just before half-time, and kind of against the run of play, as the Brumbies are maybe looking a bit more dangerous. Tom Wright spills the ball, and the Reds recover and go 80 metres down the field to score a try. It was all kinds of guys involved. It was Pataya who scored it, Salakai Aloto, Dalgunu, Tupo. They were all involved in the build-up. So it was a thing of beauty, absolutely. And then they go all the way back for a high tackle on Wright by Salakai Aloto. So the try is chalked off, and the Brumbies get a shot for a penalty, which they miss. So it goes in at 14-3 at half-time. And interestingly, I think they've counted the chalked off play in the stats, but the run meters are 302 to 184 in favour of the Reds. The tackling percentages, both sides are 91, but the penalties conceded is 9 by the Reds, 2 by the Brumbies, and it's costing the Reds big time. Reds did have a bit more luck in the second half. They had another kind of end-to-end try for Harry Wilson on 43 minutes. It was another turnover ball moment, and a few of the Reds players were involved. They thought it had maybe been knocked on, but it turned out to be a bounce off a foot of a player who wasn't in... didn't have a player in front of him, so there was no offside, but it was a bit of a crazy try, but they got that one at least. And yeah, it was 14 points to 10. So after the Brumbies had seemed pretty dominant, it only takes one try and it's suddenly, absolutely game on. And then they got one not long after and took the lead. Scott Young. It was madness. This game was seriously mad. Jock, James O'Connor, with the little sneaky blind pass. He had his eyes firmly fixed left and he passed right. That's kind of what set things up. It was proper skilled. I think maybe James O'Connor's putting his hand up for that number 10 jersey. Now, I wasn't sold on him, but I'm a bit more impressed with him in this game, especially his kicking. So, they ended up getting a try. And, they went in front. So, it was really good stuff from the Reds to be coming back into the game. I think the blind pass had been to Dalgunu, and then they ended up getting it to Wilson, who managed to... He could have gone up for a second, to be honest, but he passed it to Jock Campbell on the floor kind of thing, who ended up getting it to Scott Young. So it was good, quick thinking by the Reds, and they're 17 points to 14 ahead. Jock kicks a penalty not long after, so it's 20 points to 14. Maybe the Reds are going to get a win. Their scrum's on top. They're all kinds of controlling the game. But James O'Connor misses a couple of penalties. And eventually they concede a penalty of their own. And you know what the Brumbies do? They go 5-metre line out. And the replacement hooker McInerney scores. It's a sideline score, so they're still a point down, the Brumbies. And they've got to kick it. But they don't. The new man... what's his name? Hansen. He missed it. It was pretty bad. Wasn't a very good kick. And, there was... Seemingly, it was just kind of running out of time for the Brumbies, 78 minutes. Frost makes that big line break, but he gets isolated from his runner, so he gets turned over by the Reds. I think it was McCrate that got the turnover, actually, but then he cots them on 81 minutes. The Brumbies go through a heap of phases, and he gets penalised. It's McCrate for taking out the 9. And that man Hansen, again, he just puts his hand up. He wants the ball. He wants the kick. And he gets it. After the hoot is gone, It's like 80, probably 4 minutes by that point. Brumbies nick it at the death. You can see what it means to them because they are celebrating like mad. Young man, only like 22 years old, gets that kick. Big moment for him. So he said in the post-match that he was making up for missing the previous one. So yeah, really top stuff. Absolutely gutting for the Reds, but a good win for the Brumbies. They are looking definitely like the favourites now. Final stats, the Reds had more run meters, 525 to 335, but the Brumbies had more possession and territory. Both sides tackled really well. That's quite pleasing. Both around 90%, 90 and 89 for both sides. The Reds conceded 12 penalties to the Brumbies 7, but remember they had 9 in the first half, and they only ended up with 12. So that's a big improvement in that second half. I think their penalties conceded kind of piggybacked the Brumbies up the field in that first half, which was pretty costly. Also, the Reds line-out was 10 from 15, which is poor. That's, a third of them going astray, whereas the Brumbies were 12 from 14. But yeah, Hamish Stewart, 25 out of 25 tackles. I'll have to check if that's right tomorrow, man. That's a lot of tackles, but they were having to make a lot of tackles early, the Reds. Solomon Akata had 54 run meters, 3 defenders beaten. Brumbies go top of the log and are looking like the team to beat. I'm going to go to bed. It's after 11 o'clock here. My throat is on its last legs. But, yeah, hopefully it'll recover in time to do a stream for that Blues Highlanders game tomorrow. If the Crusaders keep winning, it's not going to matter, but still got to keep the pressure on. We'll see what happens. You guys let me know your thoughts on the games. What did you think of the moments? How do you think these teams went? What did you think of that knock-on in this one? What did you think about that last penalty in this one? And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.